Hey, good morning, everyone. It's Patrick Lovell, Truth Bomb riffing on Tuesday, August 8th, 2023 at 10:22 a.m. And I wanted to chime in here because, God, there's so much happening and information's coming at us all fast and furious, but for me particularly. And I find myself sort of at the doorstep of, I think, a moment that I've been trying to manifest for a very long time. In fact, the last year and a half feels like an eye blink, but of me just pounding, pounding, pounding the rock of truth in every way I can, given where I'm sitting with the resources that I have throughout social media to try to get you the messages of what our work, my work, has manifested over the course of a very long time to reveal the emperor's new clothes and everything that is manifesting in everyone's confusion. And I have to address why I'm doing what I'm doing and what I'm attempting to do and what this is all about because there's a lot of newcomers and I'm just so happy to see new faces, but we need to spread this. So if this is, your first time to this and you start to study what my truth bombs have been, please, please, please like and subscribe and share and spread the word. And all of you who are now finding me on Twitter, I'm so grateful and happy to make your acquaintance, but I need to explain to you who I am and what I'm all about because as much as I've done this to those of you who have supported this routine and what we're all about, for some time, I apologize for having to basically do it was a Powhatan Phil, like Groundhog Day. You got to say it over and over and over until it pounds through. And I'm a big football fan, so I'm trying to pound the rock of truth like Marshawn Lynch, go in beast mode. And to you newcomers, I'm a executive. I'm a producer. I'm a muckraking journalist first and foremost, and I'm a producer. I'm a documentary producer, and I produced a television series called The Con. You can find it for free at www.thecon.tv. It's the revelation of the largest criminal conspiracy and cover-up in history that never ended. Oh, and by the way, President Donald Trump, or sorry, former President Donald Trump, being investigated, indicted, and now north of 78 indictments and many more to come, and all of the elements that he's involved with are literally a mirror reflection of everything that I'm revealing to you. Only that Donald Trump's crimes, in comparison, even though I want to see, trust me, I want to see Donald Trump go down. I want to see MAGA go down in flames. I would love to see Donald Trump in a 5x10 cell. I'd love to see, him in a straight jacket in a camera and watch him for like the next 10 years, quite frankly, lose his mind because he's definitely forced a good portion of the country to lose their minds. But the bottom line is Donald Trump is still as huge as he is, as huge as all of the revelations and everything that's sucking up the oxygen of everything that he's involved with would be in a normal sort of scenario in years past in comparison to what I am giving you is literally a grain of sand compared to the sun. Donald Trump is a mirror of what Wall Street got away with and what they're still getting away with, and you need to be aware of. Now, first and foremost, I'm not going to relitigate this and I'm going to tell you everything that I know because I don't want to talk for 30 minutes. I don't want to talk for an hour. I want to just get straight to the point. Look, billionaires spend billions, as do multinationals, to loot trillions and to control the system. You don't live in a democracy. You haven't lived in a democracy for a very long time. You certainly haven't lived in a democracy since 2009. Why? What happened in 2009? Can anybody tell me? Raise your hand. Raise your hand out there. Put it in the comment section, please, because everybody seems to think they know everything. Tell me what happened in 2009. Cat got your tongue? A lot happened in 2009, but there was one thing in particular that's the most important revelation probably in the last 70 years, maybe in the history of the world, depending on what's happened since. Okay. The world blew up. Many of you knew that there was a thing called the housing crisis. It was the 2008 great financial crisis. Many people think of it as the subprime explosion, problem, whatever the case it was. That's a misnomer in the first place. But the bottom line is, yes, the housing industry of the United States collapsed. A lot of people blamed the people for taking out loans that they couldn't afford to pay back and got greedy, and that's what blew up the world. That's not how it works. All of that is in our work, The Con. And by the way, it's infinitely more revealing than anything anybody has ever done, most notably The Big Short. And also, which I love, by the way, and also Inside Job for you old school people out there, because think about it, that was over 10 years ago now, at least in terms of Inside Job. Think about how fast time's flown since that time period. But the world blew up. The housing industry was approximately $4.5 trillion. It led to a derivatives meltdown in a market that had reached somewhere between 600 to 800 trillion dollars by 2006ish. Okay? So why am I telling you something that took place that long ago? Well, the world blew up, it was very complex, and what happened in the aftermath is our central bank, the Federal Reserve, swooped into position to save the financial system that was a rotting, racketeering enterprise of fraud that used illegal documentation fraud and all sorts of what we call liar's loans and all other manner or form of illegal deceptive acts and practices to formulate the $4.6 trillion housing market to an $800 trillion meltdown. Okay? And they did that with what we show you in The Con at www.thecon.tv. But the Federal Reserve is supposed to operate based on some fundamental parameters. And first and foremost, the Federal Reserve is supposed to be answerable to Congress. Federal Reserve is not supposed to be an independent body of the United States government. That's not how it was erected. That's not its statutes, but that's how it exists. And ultimately, there are certain basic criteria for lending standards in the United States. That's true of you and me and everybody you see, that is determined by what we call underwriting standards. There are statutes based on the Federal Reserve's ability to be what we call the lender of last resort to stabilize the U.S. financial industry under any circumstances, except for what they did in 2008. Nowhere does it say in the statutes that the full faith and credit of the United States can be used to guarantee a global racketeering Ponzi scheme, which is exactly what I'm telling you. And so what the Federal Reserve did, because media was so stupid, and then the Obama administration so complicit with Wall Street, that they pulled the ultimate smoke and mirrors, which wasn't really very difficult. This is not rocket science. It's simply racketeering, but with everybody at the highest levels of power to grift $30 trillion in emergency lending capacity to the bankrupt financial system that got that way from racketeering and fraud, which was the ultimate deceptive acts and practices and fraud upon the United States, which is the sum total of what Donald Trump is being indicted for now and hopefully convicted, because Donald Trump learned from the best, even though he's a complete idiot. But the nature of what took place with Hank Paulson and Timothy Geithner and Ben Bernanke created what was, in Ben Bernanke's words, the American people are going to be foam on the runway for the crashing financial system. Yeah. So they gave trillions of dollars and then created what was known as quantitative easing to lift what they called the toxic assets off the banks of the books so the banks could start lending again. And they did, full stop. And they've been doing different versions of the same thing ever since. And by the way, we spent $30 trillion in 2009. We spent another $22 trillion in 2019. I don't know how many trillions completely make up exactly what took place during the COVID scenario, but all of what you're in the midst of now is a result of that. And everything that we're talking about created the disparity of wealth. It created this insane, stupid atmosphere where you can see right in front of your face that a very tiny percentage of the population has so much more wealth than the remaining people that got devastated by this and can't get back on top because we don't have an economy that makes sense. We have a grifting economy that has provided trillions of dollars to the 0.001% that has absolute control. So you're not fighting for democracy right now if Trump goes down. Biden isn't the shining knight on the white horse protecting democracy. Is he a good guy in comparison to Trump? Oh yeah, in my estimation, absolutely. Is Hunter Biden probably guilty of all sorts of shenanigans that could manifest into corruption? Sure, but at the level that Donald Trump has been involved with, not by a landslide, not even close to Donald Trump by the same comparison to what I'm revealing to you by way of Wall Street. You live in a completely corrupt society. And oh, yeah, by the way, as we're seeing revealed more and more every single day, yes, the judiciary has been corrupted, starting with the Supreme Court of the United States. And of course, what we're seeing in Judge Eileen Cannon's case. But moving downward from there, I mean, look, I've got evidence of millions upon millions of doc fraud that's used in the courts illegally because judges know it and don't allow what we call discovery to basically allow foreclosure mills and servicers that are getting paid by the banks that got paid by the Federal Reserve to bulldoze the world, while now suddenly we're using all of the same sort of revelatory tactics that demonstrate what's legal and what's not in the United States vis-a-vis Jack Smith and Fani Willis and everybody else that's involved with all of the crimes of Donald Trump. So you can't get excited about Donald Trump going down and then ignore what destroyed 50 plus million Americans. That included people that got set up that were African American widows, for example, who owned their homes, who had their houses stolen, where devastation was beyond your comprehension, to teachers and pensions and steel union guys. I mean, just the infrastructure of the United States just got destroyed by this system, and the Supreme Court erected it and enabled it, and I could go into that more and more. But look, I'm just going to keep this message like this because I've got the momentum going and people are listening. I've got the revelation of the largest criminal conspiracy and cover-up in history, and I've got more. It's at www.thecon.tv. If you check me out on Patrick Level Truth Bombs The Con on YouTube, you'll see all sorts of lectures and what I call truth bomb riffs that reveal different variables of this and sort of inside out of what's happening on a daily basis. But if you go to the pull down menu and you check out live and you pull down an 11-hour, was it a 9-hour, literally, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington type of situation where I lobbied the American people to realize, not lobbied, I literally laid out the case in 11 hours of what's called Deception Owns You, of this and then some, with all sorts of witnesses and evidence and just stuff that'll blow your freaking mind. If you could find the bandwidth and the time to delve in to get past all of the things that are just taking up all of our attention all the time. But I've got to segue to this, and I'm going to close with this. Look, we are definitely trying to create a political movement that leads to a new political party, but you've got to create the revelation of the facts of what this country has done, how it's supposed to work versus what it is actually doing. And I've got to take this case to the American people, and their time is running out because everything is connected to it. So if your issue, for example, is, the climate catastrophe, you're not going to be able to get anywhere near a situation to recreate the paradigm unless we tackle the corruption that has complete control of our system. Same with systemic predation or systemic, in both the economy as well as what the police do and what's happening in the prisons, and then any other sorts of issue that are important to you. If it's massive, you can't get there unless we tackle the corruption that has just perverted and wormed its way through our democracy and completely sabotaged and betrayed all of us for the course of the last 4 decades. But it's just gone on overdrive since 2008, and I've got all of the evidence that can turn the tables on this if only tens of millions of you got on board and we locked arms and we marched together to create a civil rights-like movement, which is a tidal wave populist crusade to purge corruption. Now look, billionaires spend billions as well as multinationals to grift trillions. That's what we've done for the last 13 years. And you're sitting on the sidelines. Look, if you've got no money in the game, you're the product and nobody's going to fight for you. But what I am attempting to try to get your attention to do, and it's the most important thing to do, is to get your buy-in, and it's got to be your literal buy-in, because if you're not invested, you're not real. That's the way it works in our society. That's quite frankly the sum total of what we got from Citizens United. If you're not invested in your political sort of manifestation, you got no cards to play. You got no chips in the game. And that's how democracy works in the United States. And it's not a democracy because it's a corporate fascist state undergirded by a criminal syndicate that uses socialism to to guarantee the mafiocracy that's now fueling fascism. That's your system. That's what this whole scenario is. And Donald Trump is just a small piece of it, to be honest with you. And so the reason I'm asking you to invest $13, a one-time $13 investment, is because from a it's sort of an ideological perspective, I'm inspired by the 13 original colonies for all of their flaws that rose up against, at that time, the most powerful empire on earth, the kingdom, the English kingdom, King George III and the East India Trading Company, and of course Parliament and the Redcoat Army and their navy. They were the most powerful apparatus on earth at the time. And yes, our founding fathers were able to unshackle the bonds of bondage to create liberty. And then they created a constitution and the Bill of Rights to, in order to form a more perfect union, which we've been fighting for ever since. So it's up to us. But we either fight physically in a massive sort of violent revolution that's going to go nowhere, because I don't know if you've noticed, but we've got the largest military on planet Earth. And if they wanted to subdue a revolution in any of its sort of ideological components, it wouldn't be very difficult, okay? What we need to do is this needs to be peaceably with the facts that I have access to, not just based on everything I've put into all of the material that I've provided for you, but also I have access to all of the legends that are the people in the system that have proved integrity, that if we gave them, through our critical mass, the power to fight the system that is, we would have the opportunity to turn this thing inside out and hold the bad guys accountable. Donald Trump is first base. And so if 13 of you, based on this premise of investing $13 in honor of the original 13 colonies, one time, and in context, if you live in Manhattan or San Francisco, that's what you're spending on a cup of coffee and a freaking, Danish, right? I mean, come on. It's nothing in context to what we have to do. And ultimately, if we could get up to, I say this frequently, there was over 100 million people that got destroyed by the 2008 great financial crisis. The collateral damage is like nothing you've ever seen. Osama bin Laden can come close to doing what our financial system did to us with the complicity of our judiciary. Once again, that's all on display in everything, all day, every day, as it relates to Donald Trump. Only in this case, and it's amazing when you think about guys like that I see all the time on Twitter, like Rob Reiner and John Cusack, and quite frankly, Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders and all the rest of them. It's like, look, everybody's responding to whatever, Donald Trump's story, delves into and moves and everything else. Meanwhile, everybody's ignored the 50 million plus people that got crucified by this. Do you think maybe of them splintered into MAGA because they've lost their minds and their families and their souls and their collateral damage and they want payback? Yeah, I'm sure a lot of them fit that description. Does that make me want to be friends with them? It makes me want to pull them out of the MAGA freaking comatose and to join us in a tidal wave crusade to purge corruption. Because it's not about right and left for me. It's about the core fundamentals of whether or not the law works. And that's what this whole situation with Trump's all about. But if you don't have the law holding power to account, then you live in a theocracy or a dictatorship or some sort of tyrannical sort of scenario, which is, of course, antithetical to everything that we're supposed to be as an American. So if we've got, 13% of what, 100 million people are, and we got 13 million people, we'd build a war chest to build a new party that would challenge the status quo, but we've got to educate and we've got to get the message out to the people. So I'm going to start with a podcast. If you check me out on all of my different sort of platforms, you'll see that I've been doing this all along anyway, but we need to do it professionally. We got to get it out there. And if you, do one-time buy-in and you bring in 13 people, we'll have a better shot to do this in a way that's going to, break through the algorithms and actually get the millions of people out there that are desperate for this information. But then also, eventually we've got to create and I'm calling it like this, think of me for you X generation folks like myself, think of me as a Bob Geldof type personality, but that's driving, a tidal wave well, I should say exodus from corruption to create a, you know, the redemption of the American dream. And so ultimately, I want to create this Lollapalooza like nationwide barnstorming tour that begins early next summer and then ends in the fall in Washington, D.C., underneath the gaze of Abraham Lincoln, where we honored that a country of, by, and for the people shall not perish from this earth. And I want to bring in everybody that's not a Nazi. If you, me, and everyone you see who isn't a Nazi, who champions dignity and decency and integrity, of course, and of course, sustainability and beauty, and we come together and we merge in unity, we will defeat the misery of tyranny. And that's what we have to do. The only force that is powerful enough to break the iron grip of this massive calamity of corruption is an enlightened public. And if we do that, we will usher in all of the answers that will create the Great Enlightenment. We're living in the Dark Ages right now. That's what this is all about. Corruption births and fuels fascism. If you join me, you plus me equals we, the people, we will crush corruption and drown the fascism that it fuels. And we'll do it because you're buying also is because think about the media. The media has been lying to us ever since. It didn't make sense what happened after 2008. And as a producer, that's why I had to go put together everything in the con, because I knew it was all a lie. But it was a lie that manifested into Donald Trump's lie. There's all sorts of continuity, and there's no, that's not a coincidence. There's all sorts of cause and effects here. And ironically, we found the only RICO conviction in the country that proves everything that I'm saying, which of course is what Donald Trump's about to go down for now in Georgia. But the sum total of defrauding the United States is basically racketeering. And that's what Wall Street did to us, only monumentally bigger. And I'm trying to break through this sort of impenetrable bubble where it's like you can focus on one guy, meanwhile ignoring the hundreds of millions of people that got destroyed, of which you might be one of them. So if you guys, got 13 people involved, we'd grow really quickly. And I think we're right on the, I don't know, right on the sort of, it just feels like there's about to be a domino here. I don't think this is my best, impassioned speech. I'm kind of like all over the place in my mind because it's crazy what we're in the midst of. But the long and the short of it is I'm right. And I have been for the whole time. And I never stop fighting because I know the difference between right and wrong. And I'm willing to lay it all on the line for liberty and justice for all. Because without it, nothing matters. You can't live free if you don't have the ability to hold corruption to account. Everything that's happening right now is a betrayal to the United States. And we've got to get the power back. The only way we're going to rip the power back from the corrupt is with the truth. And when you've got the truth, you're bulletproof. Failure is not an option. Rise, roar, revolt, onwards and upwards. Thanks for listening.